We ran through our running back rankings today. Now we got to get into the must start and sit wide receivers for week 7 fantasy football. So we're going through every single matchup, obviously, to decipher who those guys are. And obviously, there's tons of bye weeks that we already know about this week. So we're going to have to make some tough decisions. But real quick, this is not a tough decision. All you need to do to get a chance to win this free hat right now is to go down there, drop a like on the video, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and go down there and put a comment in, and you will have a chance to win this free hat right now, guys. I just hit 6,000. I need your help hitting 7,000 subscribers. So please go down there, make sure you're subscribed to the channel to show your support. So let's go ahead and dive right into these matchups right now. So the first matchup of the week, we got the Falcons at the Buccaneers this week, and we've got Mike Evans as a must start. Listen, Mike Evans before the bye week, he was really, really good. And then obviously, the week before the bye week, they went out and they played the New Orleans Saints, and he met his kryptonite. And of course, that's Marshawn Lattimore. But this week, I like Mike Evans a lot. Last week, he had a bad game, but he had still over 10 targets in that game. You give Mike Evans 10 targets against the Falcons, he's going to be really good. I got no issues with Mike Evans. I think he was a great buy low trade target before the week, heading into the week, and now I think he's about ready to go off this week. Drake London is a decent flex option, just based on recent performance alone. But make no mistake, guys, do not have a short-term memory about this. Remember what Drake London has done already this season for you. There's been bad games. In fact, there's been a goose egg. So don't forget, Drake London is still hot and cold because this offense is hot and cold. Chris Godwin's a flex option as well. He's nowhere near the mid. He's nowhere near the high end. He's in the middle end of guys because Chris Godwin does get targets. That's about it. He doesn't really have many big plays attached to him. Everybody else is pretty much irrelevant in this matchup. You don't want any Falcons receivers. Raiders at Bears. Obviously, Davante Adams is still a must start. I've gotten lots of questions on Davante Adams this week, and I keep saying consistently, Davante Adams is still a top-tier wide receiver in fantasy football. I get it. Last week was not great. The week before was not very great. And obviously, with the changeup that they're always experiencing at quarterback, it seems like you can't ever get consistency with Davante Adams. That may be the case, but he still has too great of a target share. He still is too great of a big playability guy for you to put on your bench. So you just got to kind of live with the pains of having Davante Adams in fantasy. DJ Moore's a middle-end flex option. Honestly, like he's more on the higher end because he's so capable of big plays, but it's not good with Tyson Bagent. It's just not going to be good. Even against the Raiders defense, which is a little bit weaker. Jacoby Myers, he's a decent start as well, but the problem is, I have said this all week as well, I think Jacoby Myers specifically does really well with Jimmy Garoppolo. I think he has great chemistry with Jimmy Garoppolo, and that matters here because Jimmy Garoppolo's not here this week. So there's going to be issues, I think, with Jacoby Myers. I just go ahead and say, don't go out of your way to play him. Same thing with DJ Moore, but in a week with all these bye weeks, you probably might have to make a tough decision right there. And both those guys I don't think are bad choices. Darnell Mooney's a sit. I mean, listen, Darnell Mooney's a guy that I've always liked. But to be real with Darnell Mooney, like he doesn't have that much upside with Justin Fields. And especially without him, I don't see it really at all. Everybody else is must sit. Browns at Colts. Amari Cooper's must start. I made the mistake last week of telling my audience, do not play Amari Cooper without Deshaun Watson. I think Amari Cooper's a really, really good play. I mean, listen, you could just never count out Amari Cooper in fantasy football. He's just too high upside, and he's really too good of a player to sit in most times. Deshaun Watson practiced in full this week in a couple spots. His status is still uncertain, though. At the time of this filming, it's uncertain. We'll probably hear more by Saturday night. So make sure to keep an eye out. But again, even if Deshaun doesn't go, I'm still going to play Amari. I'm going to play Michael Pittman as well. Michael Pittman still is clearly the wide receiver 1 with Gardner Minshew. I don't think the upside is quite as high, and especially against the Brown defense, I don't feel good. But again, the week that we have with all the injuries and all the bye weeks, it just forces this type of situation in to where Michael Pittman is a must start. Josh Downs is flexible, especially if you're in a full PPR league where you can get Josh Downs for like 6 catches and 50 yards. That's always going to be plausible. Every single week, Josh Downs is going to be able to do that for you. And I think he's a decent end flex option this week. Elijah Moore? No. I'm telling my audience no. This guy has gotten plenty of targets, but it hasn't accounted to anything. It's not good. It's not working for him. Commanders and Giants, nobody's must start. You've got two offenses with guys that have some decent upside sometimes, but nothing consistent. Terry McLaurin, I considered putting in must start, but I just really can't tell my audience he's a must start because Washington's offense is just they're so hot and cold. Even in the best matchups, Terry McLaurin can do nothing. So it's very similar to a Drake London type of situation, but the quarterback is just not great. And it's going to be matchup dependent. And the matchup is great this week. So if you want to play Terry McLaurin, no doubt about it, he's playable. But he's really not that great of an option. It's a very comparable situation to Drake London. Curtis Samuel is an okay flex option. Based on what he's done the past several weeks, you could play Curtis Samuel and be fine, I think. He's going to get the volume, and I mean, he's got ability to get in the end zone. So, like, I could see the big playability here. Wan'Dale Robinson is a low-end flex option that would not be here if it were for the bye weeks that we had. Like, he's not that great of an option, but he is available, I think. Everybody else is must-sit. Jahan Dotson, at this point, he's droppable. Like, if you haven't dropped Jahan Dotson, I would. He's holding dead weight. And you've also got guys like Isaiah Hodgins, who I don't think has upside. You don't have upside with Paris Campbell. It's just a gross wide receiver situation for both these teams, honestly. Lions at Ravens, next matchup here. Obviously, Amon-Ra St. Brown, you're rolling him out there. In a matchup that could be very well the best matchup of the week, you got to play Amon-Ra St. Brown for sure. There's no question here. Amon-Ra St. Brown has been excellent when he has played this year. No questions here with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Zay Flowers as well. I've got no questions on him. Listen, Zay Flowers has handled wide receiver one volume for the entire season. Last week, he finally found the end zone, and people are starting to get excited about him again. The framework was always there. He's clearly the wide receiver one in Baltimore. He handles usually at least 7 to 8 targets per game. He's getting big plays, and now he finally got a touchdown. Yeah, he's must start. Definitely, and especially in this type of matchup that's going to be super competitive. Jameson Williams is a deep shot. He's not going to be... Listen, I've said this about Jameson Williams from the get-go. He's never going to be a volume guy because that's not his game. He's not a separator. He's not an over-the-middle-of-the-field guy. This guy stretches the field, which is great, by the way, for Amon-Ra St. Brown. But, of course, he's going to get his as well sometimes. I think he's a decent option, especially in this type of week. If you want a big play, Jameson Williams could definitely do that for you. I debated putting Odell Beckham in flex territory. It's just not consistent enough. Zay Flowers is so clearly the wide receiver one. And much like past years, we haven't seen it with the Baltimore Ravens that multiple wide receivers have legit fantasy upside. Odell is always injury prone as well. He's just out of the prime of his career. If you want to, if you're really desperate, he's fine as a flex option. Very low end though. I'm not endorsing him in any way, shape, or form. Rashad Bateman's a no. Josh Reynolds, unfortunately, is a no because with Jameson Williams there, he definitely goes down to wide receiver 3, and his volume is very unstable. Bills at Patriots here. Stephon Diggs, obviously, where do you go from here, right? Like, Stephon Diggs is obviously a must-start guy. I don't think we need to discuss it. He's been excellent. He's the wide receiver 2 in fantasy football right now. Let's move on. Gabe Davis is always flexible. He's always going to be a flex-worthy guy. And occasionally, when Gabe Davis has a really good matchup, like against the Dolphins or something like that, where there's going to be lots of points probably going across against the Chiefs, against the Bengals, Gabe Davis goes into must-start territory. This week, I think the Bills are going to handle the Patriots pretty well. So they may not need Gabe Davis, but he's always flexible because of the big playability he has. All New England wide receivers, sit all of them. This should not come as a shock to anybody. You know, everybody in this room is just not good. Juju Smith-Schuster, you know, Tyquan Thornton's been irrelevant. Kayshon Boutte's been irrelevant. Kendrick Bourne is the best one of the bunch, but I can never tell my audience to start him. Everybody else is flexible. Cardinals at Seahawks. Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, they continue to be must-start guys. I know every week is different. I mean, last week for DK was a huge disappointment. In that matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals, I expected him to do much more. It didn't happen. DK Metcalf is still a must-start guy. You don't want him popping off for a 20 to 25 point game on your bench, and he's always capable of it regardless of the matchup. So I get it. I don't love having DK Metcalf on my fantasy team personally, but if I did have him, I'm starting him for sure. Tyler Lockett, I think, is the more consistent option of the two right now. Tyler Lockett's definitely must start. Marquise Brown, not a must-start for me. I've said it all week. I believe that the Cardinals are about to head into a tailspin because I don't think they're going to be competitive much longer. Listen, this is a team that is just simply not talented enough in the NFL. Like, they're just not a very talented team. They've sold off a lot of players for assets in the draft. And you know what? If you're going for draft capital, credit to you. But as far as competing, they're not going to be doing it much longer. They haven't done it the past 2 weeks. I don't think it's going to be competitive enough in this game for Marquise Brown to have real upside. That said, good flex option. No doubt about it. Just not in must start. Jackson Smith-Njigba. Been hyping him up forever, and it's finally coming to fruition. Last week against the Bengals, he saw more downfield routes and more downfield targets than any other week he had during this season. That's the missing piece for Jackson Smith-Njigba. When he gets that consistently, and I believe it starts this week, Jackson Smith-Njigba, look out. Look out. I hope you have him right now because I think we're about to see him explode. And right now, I'm flexing him in several leagues, and I think you can too. Michael Wilson, lower tier guy. If you want to take a shot on a big play, Michael Wilson can do that for you. He's been good in spots this year. I just don't think, when you look at his volume, he's usually seeing around 2 to 4 targets per game. That's just not enough. The big playability, if you want to take a deep shot, I understand it. But if you've got an option like Jackson Smith-Njigba, I'll definitely play Jackson Smith-Njigba 100% of the time over Michael Wilson. And everybody else is irrelevant. Steelers at Rams. Both Rams wide receivers, very, very much must start. Of course, Cooper Kupp is must start. Why do we even need to question that? He's gotten like 10 targets per game since he's been back. It's been excellent. He looks great. Puka Nacua is still a must start for me. I know a lot of people are getting worried with Puka Nacua. I don't agree with selling high, I guess, because that's the thing. You can't really sell him high after last week. In fact, Puka Nacua was this close to a touchdown last week. If he gets in the end zone, we're having a much different discussion this week about Puka Nacua. I've got no issues here. This defense, this secondary, they're going to be able to take advantage of it because I have a secret for you. Jerry Porter Jr., their best corner in Pittsburgh, he's not going to be starting. He's not a starter because their coaching staff is a bunch of morons. That's the reality in Pittsburgh. They'd rather roll out 2 veterans who are not very good these days with Levi Wallace and Patrick Peterson and leave their great rookie on the bench. He'll come in spots. He'll come in sometimes, but he's not going to be manned up against Cooper Kupp or Puka Nacua as he should be. Deontay Johnson back into flex territory, and honestly, it pains me to say this, but he's above George Pickens. It really is. Not because he's a better player. I think George Pickens is miles better than Deontay Johnson is, but the Steelers love to use Deontay Johnson because he's a target guy, and the Steelers are not capable of holding 2 thoughts at once on offense. They're going to be able to target Deontay Johnson and leave a lot of targets open and available for George Pickens that they won't hit. I've seen it for years. Been watching the Steelers since I was like 4 years old. This is exactly what they do offensively. They're incapable of holding 2 thoughts at once with Matt Canada and Mike Tomlin on offense. Just a reality here. I don't have a lot of upside. Don't mean to be super negative, but I've seen it for years with the Steelers. If I'm wrong, I would love to be. Tutu Atwell is a sit for me. Ever since Cooper Kupp came back, it just hasn't been good anymore. That flame has died. I said that earlier as well. Everybody else is must sit as well. Chargers at Chiefs. Ironically, I know it sounds weird, but only one guy's must start, and it's Keenan Allen, of course. Keenan Allen, target monster. No question about what Keenan Allen's going to do. As usual, if you've been watching these wide receiver must start and sit videos since the season started, you know that every single week, there's always a laundry list of players on the Chiefs who are in flex territory, and none of them seem to get cracked into must start territory. Josh Palmer's above the rest because Josh Palmer, unlike all those guys, sees consistent volume without Mike Williams. Josh Palmer is a decent flex option. I would say he's upper tier flex option. Rashee Rice is really kind of separating himself in this Kansas City Chiefs offense, which I love because I do think that he's got the most potential season long. So I don't think he's a bad flex option this week. I actually really don't. I just don't prefer him over a guy like Jackson Smith-Njigba or Joshua Palmer. But Rashee Rice, in this kind of matchup, I've got no problem telling my audience to play him. Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney. If you must torture yourself with Kadarius Toney specifically, I understand the merit here. I just would not be confident telling my audience these guys are high-end flex options. They're not. They're lower tier flex options. Volume is always moving around with these guys. It's just not good. Sit, Justin Watson. He's been awful lately. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, goose egged for you last week. He always can do that. Quinn Johnson. Quinn Johnson to me is just... I try to tell people. And I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just saying Quentin Johnston is not ready. I'm not saying he can't be good, but I did come into the season saying he's going to be a slow burn, and he's not pro ready, and we're seeing that right now with Quentin Johnston. Packers at Broncos. Christian Watson's easily must-start material to me this week. Easily. This matchup against the Broncos, I'm taking every piece I can get who's healthy and ready to go for the Green Bay Packers right now. And Christian Watson's one of their best weapons. So there's a no-brainer here as far as volume goes to me. And just big playability in this matchup, I'll take this guy all day over lots of options. Courtland Sutton is flexible because he's been their best wide receiver. And he's actually found the end zone a lot this year. So I don't have a problem with you playing Courtland Sutton. Not above Christian Watson, though. Do not do that. Romeo Doubs is flexible as well. I get it. Since Christian Watson has been back, it hasn't been as good. But I will say Romeo Doubs, in this type of matchup, I think there's going to be plenty of fantasy points at the wide receiver position. And Jerry Jeudy, if you must, he's fine, but it's bad. Like, lower tier flex option at this point. And I've actually dropped Jerry Jeudy in a shallow league. I just don't see the upside here. If you want to, for volume's sake, I get it, but don't expect many big plays, if any at all. Marvin Mims Jr., Jaden Reed, kind of hurts me to say because I like both those rookies a lot, but Marvin Mims goose last week. And Jaden Reed, since Watson's been back, really has not had much of a role at all. So I need to see it first with both these guys. I don't want to drop them, especially if I'm in deeper leagues, but this week we got to put them on our bench. Dolphins and Eagles. You start every single one of them. Tyreek Hill, AJ Brown, Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, all of them on your starting roster. Listen, I get it. Like Tyreek and AJ Brown, they're no-brainers, right? Nobody needs to question that. Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, they've had their fair share of bad games this year. And Jalen Waddle, when he's hit, it hasn't even been that good of a game. I get it. Devonta Smith, it's been a while since we've seen him put together a great game, but he has done it this year. You want the wide receivers in this matchup. You certainly do. This matchup has the highest over-under of the week, and I think there's going to be points all over the place. Even though I think the Eagles are going to win, the Dolphins are going to be slinging the ball. I think they're actually going to throw it a lot because I think the Eagles will do a really good job of shutting down the run game. So I think they're going to need to throw the ball a lot. And Jalen Waddle is going to get volume as a result. And Devonta Smith, I want the wide receivers in this matchup, plain and simple. The Dolphins secondary is not very good. Nobody else is really flexible. I considered putting Braxton Berrios in here, but with Jalen Waddle, he really doesn't see much opportunity. And Quez Watkins really just hasn't seen much opportunity as well this year, so everybody else is a must-sit. Last match of the week, 49ers at Vikings. The Monday night game, Brandon Ayuk is a must, especially since before I started filming, literally minutes before I turned on the camera, I saw that Deebo Samuel was not practicing on Saturday. It's not looking like he's going. So Brandon Ayuk is absolutely a must start in this matchup versus the Vikings because the upside is certainly there from a matchup perspective. And I think the 49ers are going to kill the Vikings this week. Jordan Addison is also a must start for me. I think Jordan Addison, listen, like without the touchdown last week, it was disappointing. I think he's going to get more volume this week. Listen, the Vikings are going to get down big early, and they're going to have a lot of garbage time to make up for it. I think Jordan Addison's going to be fine. Similar to kind of the Adam Thielen situation in Carolina, except I think Jordan Addison's a much better player. KJ Osborne is flexible. Looking at what he did last week and the week without Justin Jefferson, he's flexible to me. Not anyone I'm excited to flex, but I would say he's a middle tier flex option. At this point, like I said, if Deebo Samuel goes, he's going to be behind KJ Osborne because we already saw what he did when he was questionable one game. He gave you nothing. So just be careful with Deebo Samuel if he plays. I have a feeling we're not going to have that problem, though. I don't think he's going to be able to go. Everybody else is irrelevant. So let me know what questions you need answered before Week 7 Fantasy Football in the comments below. And if you want to see the top 30 running back rankings for Week 7 Fantasy Football, click on this video right here.